What's happening, everybody? Dom here from Lensprotogo and the Lens Rentals. Welcome back to the channel. So if you haven't noticed already, I'm bringing you this week's video from my humble abode. Big winter storm headed our way, pretty much happening right now. Had to run into the office, grab all my stuff, come back here. Let's see how much snow is out there. Oh, yep, coming down by the pound. Okay. Yeah, anyways, I've got the X-T5 and of course the X-T4. You know the deal, the purpose of this video is pretty much to talk about what features came to the X-T5, especially coming from its predecessor, the X-T4. But I'm going to make sure to be referencing the X-H2 and X-H2s cameras that came out in between the X-T4 and X-T5, because a lot of the features that this thing got, we saw in those two cameras first, for whatever that's worth. So pretty much we're gonna check out the X-T5 on the outside, check it out on the inside, look at some of those on paper stats, stills and video alike. I'm gonna have pretty much a constant chart up, bumping those stats up next to the X-T5. It's gonna be so much fun. I do plan on making a more dedicated video that's going to showcase a lot of that 6.2K internal video. I want to showcase that internal teleconverter mode in stills, just a bunch of stuff. So be on the lookout for that video in a couple of weeks. And also, excitingly, together I'm testing out both the X-T5 and the Nikon the Nikon Z9. So pretty exciting content going to be rolling out over the next couple of weeks. Don't go anywhere as if you were going anywhere. I don't know, why do people say that? So again, like I said, starting from the outside in, let's talk about what's new with the Fujifilm X-T5. Okay, so build-wise, here is definitely where these two cameras are going to be the most similar. So first of all, weight. The X-T5 has shaved off a couple grams from the X-T4. It is slightly noticeable just handling the two bodies together. The main size difference is that the X-T5 is going to be shorter width-wise, and there are a couple of body design choices that sort of go along with that. For example, that sort of prism geometry around the viewfinder is a little bit wider on the X-T4s because it has some more space. And the dials on the X-T5 are a little bit more squished together, but again, just looking at the two cameras, it's hard to tell. The grip is very similar, although the X-T4 has a slight little ridge towards the end of the grip, and the X-T5 is a bit smoother. And also the rubber material used for the X-T5 is a bit more tacky and less rigid and smooth than that on the X-T4. Anything else changed is more of just like a design change, where the hardware on these collars and knobs are just a little bit more spruced up, a little sharper looking. Media gate is the same, the cards go the same way, the inputs and outputs are the same, although we'll get into those in a second. What is different actually is the X-T5 has the hinged doors that rigidly open up and stay open, where the X-T4 still has the kind of flappy rubber hinges. The X-T5 still features the stills and movie collar underneath the shutter speed dial, just like the X-T4 introduced. But definitely 100% the major difference between the X-T4 and the X-T5 build-wise is the choice of design in screen. The X-T4 had the classic fully articulating screen that a lot of people have voiced is their favorite. It definitely has its pluses and minuses. For example, storage, being able to flip it in and having the backside of the LCD face out just for protection. It's nice. Video creators are definitely going to tell you that LCD being able to come out and front face them is a massive plus. You're not going to be able to do that on the X-T5. The X-T5 features like a vari-angle LCD, where at first it allows this horizontal tilting, pretty generous tilt up and down, but then there's a little side latch on the LCD itself that unlocks a second tilting axis. So kind of like you're going to hear me say with the Z9, just a lot of like hardware here for not that much tilting motion. There are definitely some people that are going to like this design better, but I think I would prefer the fully articulating screen that the X-T4 had. And that is pretty much one of the only, probably the only thing I'm going to like better about the X-T4 than the X-T5 in this video. As for the viewfinder, this viewfinder is going to remain, I think, pretty much the exact same at 3.69 million dots. The X-T4 had an excellent viewfinder. It's honestly hard to get much better than that. All right, now moving on to the power and battery scenario. Both cameras are going to take the newer Fuji NPW235 battery pack, but the X-T5 is actually going to be considerably more forgiving with battery life. As for the media, we have absolutely no change in the media situation from X-T4 to X-T5. Both cameras are still going to take two UHS Type 2 SD cards. Moving on over to the inputs and outputs panel on the other side. Well, first of all, I'll start by this Fuji flash sync on the front here. Both cameras are going to have that. Like I said, both cameras actually share the same exact inputs outputs scenario. They're both going to have a 3.5mm mic jack, and in both kits, Fuji offers you a headphone adapter that goes in here, so you kind of have to choose one or the other. But anyways, we also get a micro HDMI, a 2.5mm remote shutter jack, and a USB-C. Though definitely notable here is the X-T5 is going to feature a newer gen USB-C that's going to be a lot faster for file transferring and stuff. And that's it for the outside of the camera, like build and design, what you can see and whatnot. Now jumping into the more internal stuff, and what we're talking about next is absolutely at the top of the list of the major differences between the X-T4 and X-T5. Brand new sensor and processor. The X-T5 features a 40.2 megapixel BSI X-Trans CMOS 5 HR, which is the exact sensor that's on the X-H2s. So similarity number one. Considerable resolution size compared to the X-T4's 26.1 megapixel BSI X-Trans CMOS 4. So a whole lot of questions stem from that. We're going to talk about performance and whatnot in a little bit, so hold your horses there. And backing that readout from that new sensor, of course, we have an X processor 5 going on here. Anyone want to guess what the X-T4's processor was? Yeah, it was the X processor 4. So given that sensor size and new processor, you might have expected a little bit of give and take jumping from camera to camera here. They definitely had to sacrifice some things, bringing us the X-T5 to jam in all those new features. But anyways, diving into more performance stuff, for image buffer, compressed RAWs at 15 frames per second, the X-T5 is going to allow 119 JPEGs and 39 RAW images in its buffer, and the X-T4 will allow 110 JPEGs and 38 RAWs, so pretty similar there. And at each of the camera's 20 frames per second modes, the X-T5 will do 168 JPEGs and 72 RAWs, and the X-T4 will do 114 JPEGs and 37 RAWs. Granted, these are two kind of different modes here. And the X-T4's 30 frames per second mode will allow 60 JPEGs and 35 RAWs. Okay, moving on, another huge topic, autofocus. There's for sure a noticeable difference in autofocus performance in continuous autofocus over photo and video from the 4 to the 5. I plan on doing a bit more testing in a video to come, but aside from just pure performance, so the X-T4 offers face and eye continuous autofocus, and I always thought that its performance varied very greatly on which lens you were using. The X-T5 got a lot of sweet added programming, and again, this is another thing we saw introduced in the X-H2 and the X-H2s, mainly all these added subjects. So in addition to face and eye autofocus, the X-T5 is also going to be able to track animals, birds, automobiles, motorcycles, airplanes, and trains. They went nuts programming all these different subjects into this thing, a huge leap from the X-T4. So going back to the sensor real quick, one interesting thing is the X-T5's sensor is going to be slightly more light sensitive than the X-T4's, and this is going to allow for a couple different things. First of all, the X-T5 in an electronic shutter mode can achieve a fastest shutter speed of 1/180,000th a second, which is pretty nuts. The X-T4's was already pretty good at 1/32,000th. This is also going to allow the X-T5 to have a lower low ISO in the normal and extended ranges, where now the new low in normal is 125 and 64 in extended, where the low was 160 in normal and 80 extended on the X-T4. Another big photo thing, the X-T5 is going to offer a pixel shift imaging feature. They offer all these different time intervals to achieve this shot, but overall it's a 160 megapixel shot, takes 20 images. No option for that on the X-T4. Now I gotta mention another pretty significant improvement before we jump into the video stuff. IBIS. They're both rocking the 5-axis sensor stabilized thing, but the X-T5 is coming in with a rating of 7 stops compared to the 6.5 stops of the X-T4. Oh, also I almost forgot to mention the built-in teleconverter mode, which is awesome considering that increased resolution on the sensor. Great tool for sport shooting or honestly just anything. And now moving on to video stuff. If you've been paying attention to Fuji's new cameras recently, you know that they're just getting increasingly more video capable. The X-T4 was our example of that. Blew us away with that 4K 60 internally, oversampled the entire sensor area at only a very slight 1 1.18x crop. 4K up to 30p, same thing, but with no crop. But all of this was in 10-bit 420. And again, you'll see a theme coming in here. The X-H2 and the X-H2s both have similar video modes to this coming up. But the X-T5 is going to be able to shoot 6.2K video internally up to 30p at a 1.23x crop. But this is line skipped, aka subsampled from the sensor. Considered to be a little less desirable, but your options are a lot greater here too, so you can take some oversampled video. With these 4K modes right here, we get LPCM format H.265 videos taking 10-bit 422, and as you can see, honestly, another major thing in and of itself, I'm navigating through all of this through this movie setting list, which I talked all about in my X-H2s video. This video menu is super helpful. It breaks down your resolution and frame rate by media, bitrate, and recording type. At the bottom there is where your film profile is, and on the right panel is showing you what's going over HDMI. So this is just an amazing way to see all that stuff in one place. What you're recording to where. And now speaking of recording over HDMI and raw video and such, on the X-T4, that's how you're going to get your 4K 60p at a 10-bit 422 sampling rate. Unfortunately, you were doing that over a micro HDMI output. Things unfortunately have not changed there on the X-T5, still micro HDMI, but now that's going to unlock ProRes RAW shooting. To an Atomos Ninja, you'll be able to record ProRes RAW video in 6.2K up to 30p, and likewise just to a Blackmagic recorder, just all the same thing. Another thing video-wise we're getting new with the X-T5 is the addition of F-Log2. On paper, that is going to allow you to achieve a slightly higher dynamic range in video than on the X-T4, but honestly, when I tested that in my X-H2s video, it was very hard to tell the difference. And just a couple of other last things here. On the X-T5, Fuji actually introduced a couple of AI deep learning strategies to improve some of the functions in this camera. Supposedly, the phase detection autofocus is improved in this way, and also the auto white balance in this camera is aided by AI deep learning, interestingly enough. And also, lastly, we do have the addition of this nostalgic negative film simulation that's not present on the X-T4. Its description is amber tinted highlights in rich shadow tone for a printed photo look. Alright everybody, that is pretty much going to do it on this video covering what new features came to the Fujifilm X-T5, especially coming from the previous model, the X-T4. But as I'm sure you gathered, and hopefully I made my point pretty clear, that pretty much most of the features that we saw included in the X-T5 that made it different than the X-T4, we had already seen from the Fujifilm X-H2 and X-H2s. So again, in the whole conversation of which Fuji body to own / rent, Fuji definitely threw you two interesting curveball choices with those two. So again, be on the lookout for more X-T5 content. I want to dedicate a whole video to some testing type stuff, high burst shooting, continuous autofocus in photo and video. I of course want to show you that 6.2K video internally and externally. Just couldn't jam it all into this video. As always, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today, or any questions about the X-H2 or X-H2s for that matter, you know what to do. Drop a comment in the comment section below and we'll start a discussion. You can also hit that little like button down below this video to let me know that you liked this video. But if you didn't do any of that, you could hit that subscribe button. 100,000 of you have already let me know that you enjoy this content by hitting that subscribe button already. So if you want to join that super cool troop of 100,000 plus people, what are you waiting for? Anyways, that's pretty much going to do it for this video, everybody. So keep it chill, and we'll see you in the next one.